camp a little bit, since you were studying this, during a time of pretty severe economic downturn for the whole country, would you say that Joliet was comparable to other cities in our region?
Yes, I believe Joliet was comparable to other cities of similar size and with the same economic base. There's a term that planners at the time used, and it was called Rust Belt. And mostly that was a term that was used to describe towns that had a heavy industrial manufacturing economic base that were located in what was called the Rust Belt. So most of the large Midwestern states, and you can imagine, from, the eastern seaboard, the Pittsburghs, to Detroit, Chicago, Joliet, many towns in the state of Ohio that had the same sort of makeup as Joliet, with a heavy influence of heavy industry. So yes, Joliet was very, very similar to a lot of those towns, and a lot of those towns suffered the same fate during that time period.
Would you say that cities, particularly in Michigan, like Detroit and Flint, would you say that that Joliet in its recovery was more unique than those cities?
That's a very good question. I think that each town, although similar in its economic base, has and had its own uniqueness to it. Joliet, of course, always benefited from great location. Whether it was being on the river or with the transportation connection with the highway system, and also rail, which was very important to Joliet. And Joliet also had a unique, I think, cultural heritage with the stone quarries that were here around the region. That was one of the early images that the city took on, with the limestone quarries that were here. That maybe other towns didn't really have that going for them. So I think there was some similarities, but then also, each place had its own unique trait to it, including Joliet.
You said you worked with elected officials. Can you tell me about just some of your experience with Mayor Art Schultz?
Yeah, so Mayor Art Schultz was, when I came to Joliet, he was the first mayor that I worked with, and I remember that he took the lead on wanting to get a baseball team in Joliet, and it seemed like that was, something that he took on. I mean, that was just, his project. Something that he wanted to see happen, and he made it happen. And he was he worked hard to bring that to Joliet, and I think that's a lasting legacy for Mayor Schultz.
One of Mayor Schultz's initiatives was also to bring casinos,
Yes.
riverboat casinos, to Joliet. Can you just talk about what you think the importance of an entertainment industry in Joliet had in the impact of our economic growth?
Yes, I think the riverboat casinos were important to Joliet. I think they were the beginning of the revitalization for the town. They provided a revenue source that supported new roads, new infrastructure that the city was able to undertake. If those revenue sources were not in place, then the city would not have been able to do the things that it was able to do during the early 90s to really jumpstart growth and development in Joliet. So those two casinos, I think, were vital to the revitalization of Joliet.
Would you say that Joliet had a defining moment where it could have either been saved or it could have taken even more of a downturn?
I think, from my perspective, I think the defining moment was the mayor, the city council, and the top administrators, and this is probably the late 80s before I arrived, making the conscious decision to figure out how to do something with the downtown. And they actually put a plan in place at that time, and that plan called for a major downtown entertainment venue, which actually became the casino. So that was the beginning, I think, of an upward trajectory for the city. And, you know, gaming is and was something that a lot of folks don't feel comfortable with, particularly, you know, if you're getting revenues from, you know, an activity like that some people may look down on. So it was, I think, you know, not an easy decision for the city to make, but it was something that they felt necessary, and they followed through on it, and they were able to win those licenses, and they were able to start, you know, the growth of the city. And I think that was the beginning of an upward trajectory for the city, as opposed to just maintaining and maybe even going further down.
What would you say is Joliet's main economic base right now?
Well, I think right now, because of the great location that we have at the intersection of I-80 and I-55, the rail that comes through the town, and all of the new logistics firms that we have, distribution centers, I think that's forming a major base for Joliet. And we have a 3,000 plus acre logistics park that's being built out, 900 acre rail yard that brings in just numerous amounts of freight. So that's creating jobs. It's creating more activity throughout the area that's taking advantage of that great location. And I think another strength that the city of Joliet has that most people don't really think about is the educational institutions that are here, primarily University of St. Francis and Joliet Junior College. I mean, those are two very well known, very well respected institutions that bring in a lot of students, they employ a lot of people, and they are increasingly important for our downtown. And we would like to further leverage those types of activities as well.
Can I just ask what is a logistics park? What is that?
Logistics park is, just think of a business park, if you will. So you have a location that has, you know, numerous businesses that locate there because there's some commonality to an attribute. So, and mostly it's access to an expressway or access to some sort of infrastructure that they all benefit from. So with logistics park, it's the same type of a concept, but it's more geared towards distribution centers, warehousing, trucking, and freight handling.
I'm just going to shift